Okay, so I've already removed the serpentine belt. As to how that is done, please refer to my previous video. So in order to remove the alternator, it's held on by two bolts, one here and okay, that one, and one on the, I hope you can see that one here. Okay, but before that we need to remove this idler pulley. Okay, so 14mm bolt. I'm going to loosen that up, and then okay. Okay, so there's the idler pulley. Now we can loosen this 14mm as well. Okay. Okay. Now we will remove the one underneath, this one. Okay, 12mm. Okay. Now it's just a matter of wiggling the alternator. Okay. Okay, so there it is. Okay, so now that we've got the alternator off, we're going to perform the pulley test again. You see, this shaft rotates with the rotor inside. Now should this turn, this should lock itself on here, thereby making the rotor spin as well. Now it's not locking, it should lock, similar to this. Okay, this, it should be able to spin freely counterclockwise, but when you should turn it clockwise, it should lock. In this case, it's not. So I'm going to remove this. Okay, so let's try and remove the cover. And voila. Okay, so the bad news is I don't have a special tool to remove this pulley. However, what I do have is ingenuity and a welder. So I measured this inside of this pulley, and it is 17 mm. So my plan is I'm going to use this, weld this to a piece of socket. That way I can use my impact wrench. So okay, I'm going to weld this. Okay, so I'm going to wait for this to cool off, and let's see if we can use this. Okay, so now let's try. Okay, that was quick, very nice. So now we're going to replace this. Hopefully I can source one out, and hopefully it's not going to be very expensive. Okay, so before we're going to even bother to source one of these and replace this, we need to first make sure that our alternator itself is still in working condition. Otherwise, if we buy this, replace this, and then we discover that this thing is not working, then we're just going to waste money. Okay, so in order for us to ascertain whether or not this thing is still working, is to recreate the condition as though this were mounted on our engine. Okay, so we are going to need a 12-volt battery, a multi-tester, a hand drill, some wires, and some 12-volt lights. Okay, now before we proceed, it is imperative that you need to make sure that all the wires that you're going to use is working, meaning that they are not broken, as well as the bulbs, they are all working. Okay, it is imperative that you do this. Otherwise, if you're not going to check your wires as well as your lights, it might lead you to an erroneous conclusion. It will lead you to believe that you have a faulty alternator, but in reality it was just because you use either a broken wire or a bulb that is not working. Okay, so make sure of that. So in order for us to perform this test properly, we need to understand what each of these terminal represents. So in this alternator, the terminal diagram is indicated right here. Okay, come on, focus. See, IGSLM. Now IG stands for ignition. This is the terminal that powers up your alternator as soon as you turn the ignition switch to on. Okay, S is for sensor. This is directly connected to your battery via fuse, and then L is for lamp. And this is the connection that goes to your dashboard that lights up your battery icon. If the alternator is not putting out a charge, the battery icon lights up, and if it's putting out a charge, the battery icon goes away. Okay, so that is why we need this bulb. In this test, we're going to use this bulb to simulate our battery icon on our dashboard. And last but not least, M is for monitor, and this goes straight to your ECU. And this for this test, we don't need to connect this one. Okay, so if we're going to look at this terminal right here, like so, we have the, hold on, we have the ignition terminal here, the sensor here, and this is for lamp, and this is for the monitor that goes to your ECU. And this post right here is called the B post. This is the charging output terminal of the alternator that goes straight to your battery via fuse as well. So now I have four wires here. Just pay attention. I'm all going to connect them all in one end. Okay, this one I'll connect to the B post. Okay, this black wire I'll connect to the sensor. Okay, this red wire where in the bulb is attached, I'm going to connect to the lamp terminal. Okay, and this is for our ignition. Okay, so I'll connect this last. Now as for the negative side of the connection, we only need to have a one connection. Okay, so I'll connect this to our negative side of the battery and to the battery body of the alternator. This one I will connect to the positive side of the alternator. Okay, I mean positive side of the battery. So like I've said, this is for our ignition switch. So when I connect this is going to simulate us turning the ignition switch key to the on position, and that light should light up. That is going to simulate our battery icon. Okay, so another connection that I'm going to make is I'm going to use this light. We'll connect one part of the wire to the B post and the other part to the terminal. This is going to simulate our load that is being put on the alternator. Just think of this as your headlight, okay, or any electrical component on your car. So the last connection that we're going to connect is the multimeter, the red side on the B post, the charging output of the alternator, and the negative to the negative terminal of the battery. Okay, so DC volts, 12.4 volts. Okay, so we're going to connect everything now. Okay, so it's lighting up. This is our headlight and this is our battery icon. And should I turn this, that should turn off. There's something wrong with our, and we have a slight increase in voltage, 12.6. Okay, should I remove this? Our alternator is now self-sustaining, and we are getting a reading of 14 volts. Okay, you see, even if I'm going to remove this, now basically the alternator is now already self-sustaining, right, and it's putting out a voltage reading of 13.9 volts. See, so that's how you know if your alternator is still working. However, if I'm going to turn this off, see, now even if I'm going to turn that, it won't light up, because the one thing about the alternator is it needs an initial power from the battery in order for it to function. So we'll do that again. Okay, see, the 12.7 the light. Okay, sorry about that, the test probe got disconnected. Okay, so let's do that again. Okay, so we have no reading, but if I'm going to do that, it's putting out a charge of 14 volts. Okay, so now the alternator is already self-sustaining. The battery has already, the battery terminals has already been disconnected. So this way, we are now sure that the alternator is still working. Okay. So say for example, after doing that, your test yielded negative result, meaning it leads you to the conclusion that this is not working. So you would want to know what's wrong with it. So I'll show you how. Okay. So the first thing that you would want to do is to perform an overall diode test. One probe to the B post and one probe to the body of the alternator. So we're getting a reading of 0.4 volts. That's good. And we should not get a reading when we reverse the polarity of the probes. Okay, so we have a good diode. Now we're going to open this up. With this particular type of alternator, it's good because we only need to take the back cover off, because all the terminals that we need to check is already in this area. Okay. Very easy. That's just it. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to perform an individual diode check. In this particular alternator we have 6. This is 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, 5 and 6. Okay. In this particular alternator, you can find the diode here. Okay, see 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, as opposed to the overall diode check, wherein we connected the probes here and one on the body, the body of the alternator, when it comes to performing an individual diode check, we're going to place one probe here and the other probe on here. Okay. So we should not have a reading. We should not have a reading, and we should not have a reading. Okay. But if we're going to reverse that polarity, I hope you can see that. We are getting a reading of 0.519 volts and 0.519 volts as well. Now we're going to do these 3. Okay. Now as for these 3 diodes right here, the other side of the terminal is of course on the other side. Okay, like that and right there. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do that individually now. Try to hit the other side of the diode. This one as well. We're not getting a reading. Okay, and this one. Now, if we're going to reverse the polarity, we should have a reading 0.519, 0.5. So we all have good diodes. Okay. Now the next thing that we're going to check is if we have continuity in our stators. Okay, these are the 3 ends of the stator. Okay, this particular alternator, these are the 3 ends of the stator. Okay, so put your multimeter on the continuity test. Okay, verify. Now this should beep, this should beep, this should beep, and this should beep. Okay. Now at times you need to give this a good scratch because of dirt. Okay. So our stator is okay. So the next thing that we'll do is we're going to check if we still have a good pair of carbon brush. Okay. Okay, so that's still very good. So we would also want to perform a continuity test on our carbon brush. Its orientation on the alternator is like so. So this is the terminal that sends signal to the carbon brush towards our rotor. Okay, so we should have continuity, okay, on the rear side of the carbon brush, and here as well on this, the one that's on the front side. Okay, so we have good carbon brush. Now the next thing that we're going to test if we still have a good rotor. Okay, so we're going to test that via these slip rings of the alternator. Okay, so the way we do that is to put it on our continuity test. In my case, in this digital multimeter, the continuity test is also as well as the ohms test. The ohm setting, the resistance setting. So if you don't have this continuity test, then just put it on the resistance. Okay, so what we're looking for is it should beep, and we should not have a reading more than 3 ohms. Okay, so we're getting a reading of 2.9 ohms, so that's good. Should not be more than 3 ohms, 2.3 ohms. Okay, so we have a good rotor. Now I'll show you what a bad rotor looks like. Okay, so let's do this on this thing, and we're not getting a reading. We're going to reverse the polarity. We're not having a reading as well. And let's do this on this one, and the same. Okay, so if I'm going to put that on my ohms test, the resistance test. Like I've said, we should not have a resistance of more than 3 ohms. In this alternator, in this rotor, we're getting a resistance of 14 ohms. So that's not good. Okay, this one, we really do not have a reading on this one. So both of them are already not working. Okay, so that's what a bad rotor looks like. However, on this case, okay, let's test it again. I'll show you. This is just the ohms test. Okay, should not be more than 3 ohms. So 2.3 ohms. So the next thing that we are going to do is we would want to make sure that the rotor is not coming into contact with the stator. Okay, because if it does, then you have a alternator that is shorting out. So this is the stator, and it should not come into contact with each other, because if that's the case, then your alternator is going to short out. So we're going to test this. So the way we do that is we're going to put it on our continuity test. Okay, so this is our stator again. Okay, so as well as this one. Okay, so I'm going to put one probe here. So I'll just clip that probe with this alligator clip. Okay, the other probe, I'm going to touch it to this slip ring as well as on this slip ring. Okay, we're going to test one by one, and we should not hear a beeping. Okay, so when you do this, rotate the rotor, and we should not hear a beeping, because if we do, then the rotor as well as the stator is coming into contact with each other, and that's not good. So in this case, there's none. So we're now going to move on. So basically, with all that is done, we now have a good alternator. So the last remaining thing that we have not performed a test on is the voltage regulator. Okay, so that's how you roll out each component out in order for you to ascertain whether or not the alternator, or what's wrong with the alternator. So now the last thing that we're going to do is to check our voltage regulator. So the way we're going to do that is to reconnect all the connections that we did earlier, okay, without the carbon brush. And should I turn this on, this should light up. Now you should take a light bulb of equal wattage and equal voltage of this. Okay, now you should connect this one here and one the body. Okay, you see both lights are lighting up, but this one is lighting dimmer and the other one is lighting up brighter. Okay, now that's how you know that you have a good voltage regulator. Otherwise, if you're going to have either of these lighting up brightly of equal brightness, then you have a bad regulator, or either is not lighting up or neither is lighting up, then you have a bad voltage regulator. In this case, okay, you see, you have a good voltage regulator. The one is brighter, this one is dimmer. Okay, so now we are sure that the alternator is in perfect working condition. Okay, so now we can put everything back in its place. In order for us to put the carbon brush back in its place, we just need this. Okay, push them down, insert this in order to jam the carbon brush from coming back out again. Now it's just a matter of slipping it over the rotor, and then that's it. So all in all, that's how you perform a diagnosis of your alternator, and for you to find out what's really wrong with this. Okay, so unfortunately I could not find a replacement for this, not during this lockdown quarantine. Every automotive store that I went to is closed. There are those that are open, but they do not have this at hand. So what I decided to do is I just welded the bearing shut. So now this is effectively a single piece pulley. Now be advised, I would like to remind you, I do not recommend in doing this. I just wanted to do this just so we can have a conclusion for this video for now. Okay, just so I can prove to you that this is indeed the culprit for the no charge issue. Okay, so I'm going to put this on our alternator, and then I'm going to put the alternator back on our vehicle, and then let's see our result. Okay, so I've got everything back in place, the air filter, the sensor, as well as the pulley, which I welded into a single piece pulley. It's already there. Now we have our multimeter here. Now it's giving us a reading of 12.4 volts. Should I turn on the engine, if the alternator is putting out a charge, the reading should be somewhere between 13.5 to 14.5 volts. Anything between those numbers is good. Okay, so I'll turn on the engine now. Okay, so if you notice, it's now putting out a charge, 13.7 volts. So that's good. So there's really nothing wrong with our alternator. And also the squeaking whining noise has also disappeared. Now again, I would like to repeat and remind you that I do not recommend in doing this, but desperate times calls for desperate measures. So I had to do this just so we can have a conclusion for this video, that it is indeed just the alternator or overrunning clutch pulley of the alternator that is not working. So you see, now it's 13.9, so there's really nothing wrong with our alternator. So I believe that's all that I can show you. Hopefully in time I can find a replacement for that. So I hope. Okay, so before I will end this video, I would just like to remind you and to inform you that I'm not a professional. I'm only a DIYer. So should you wish to emulate what you have seen on this video, do so at your own risk. Okay, so I hope this video can help you out, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. So thank you for watching.